If you're not in person, there's all kinds of conversations and contexts that you just don't get to participate in. Like that's what happened to us at Passport. Everybody was in Charlotte. The vast majority of the company, not just engineer, but the company was in Charlotte. Then we were like, oh, we just bought a bunch of guys that live in Austin and are distributed. We just bought a company where everybody's in New York. That was really complicated and changed the culture pretty dramatically. When you're trying to integrate people, we want to make them feel included, but everything about our culture is in person.
But that's where it usually falls apart, though. You bring on somebody remote and they're just left off in Remoteville where everybody else is in person and they're just assumed that everything's okay. But 9 times out of 10, it's not okay. You have to have this middle ground where you have a remote culture, but in person, you have to think in both worlds.
We were doing some recent conversations around talent strategy. We thought we'd continue that conversation a little bit around hybrid management. You've got people in the office, you've got people doing remote, talk through some of the challenges and some of the considerations as an engineering leader in those contexts, and how can you provide the best quality of life for your team, but also the most productivity and the best execution out of a group in that situation. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't want to get into the pros and cons of hybrid or remote or things like that. But I like the idea of how do we manage where some are remote, some are hybrid, some are full in the office. That's a difficult group to manage when some people can be in person and some people are left on their own islands in who knows where, in Utah or New Hampshire or things like that. That's tough because that was the world I just left. You know, we had some people who loved to come in the office, and we had people who were off, and you could just see the longing in their eyes when we're all in person and they're on video and they're like, "Oh, what'd you guys do last night?" When we were all out blowing up some steam after work. So that's a tough world to be in.
I've sort of always said you want to be one or the other if you can. Have everybody in the office or have everybody remote. The hybrid is really painful. It does get into a situation where you have, I don't want to call it second class citizens because it's not intentional. To your point, if you're not in person, there's all kinds of conversations and context you don't get to participate in if the majority of the folks are in a hub, right? So if you're headquarters or there's big hubs, obviously the bigger the company, the less this is going to be true, right? Like your huge companies don't put everybody in one building. You're going to have hubs all over the country, maybe even all over the world. And that's probably the vast majority who we're talking to is like, you don't have it one way or the other. It's a hybrid. Often bigger companies have things like acquisitions. That's what happened to us at Passport. Everybody was in Charlotte. Literally, we had like 2 or 3 guys in India, but the vast majority of the company, not just engineer, but the company was in Charlotte. Then we were like, oh, we just bought a bunch of guys that live in Austin and are distributed. We just bought a company where everybody's in New York. And like all of a sudden we were a nationally distributed company. That was really complicated and changed the culture pretty dramatically. When you're trying to integrate people, you're trying to tell these people, hey, we just bought your company. You're one of us now. We want to make them feel included, but everything about our culture is in person.
But that's where it usually falls apart, though, is that you acquire, you bring on somebody remote and they're just left off in Remoteville where everybody else is in person and they're just assumed that everything's okay. But 9 times out of 10, it's not okay. You have to have this middle ground where you have a remote culture, but in person. I've never quite been able to get that right because you have to think in both worlds.
To do that well, to not have the remote folks be second-class citizens, it requires an enormous amount of intentionality. Things change constantly. Obviously, around the pandemic, remote work exploded. People moved out of the major cities and things like that. And then there's now been an unwinding of that partially, not completely. There's still companies that are very much embracing that. It's really interesting to watch like the startup world, their sort of behaviors around that, especially when California was very slow on some of the opening back up stuff. A lot of those people just went full remote and stayed full remote and then still haven't come back. A lot of aggressive startups moved to Austin and Nashville and Miami because they wanted to be able to meet in person and not have all the restrictions. Now that's kind of reverted back. We're back to, the hot thing on Twitter is talking about 996, right? Like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. There's a particular cultural performativeness to that Silicon Valley loves to promote. There are people, I'm sure, that are grinding that hard, but for the most part, it's performative. You can't be effective that many hours a week in creative endeavors.
Your performance degrades While you're taking 2 hours off in the middle of the day and just ending at 9.
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing people don't talk about. Like the guys that do a lot, like, and again, I'm sure there are folks that this is not true for, but what I've observed is the people that work those kind of hours, they waste so much time. Like they're not really working a straight 12 hours, right? Like those investment banking guys that love to, show that they're in the office till 10, 11, 2 in the morning, whatever. They're not grinding. They might be like right up against a deal, but to your point, they're off taking 3-hour lunches and, all kinds of other goofy things that go on. Unless you're in the middle of it and it's real for you, I would not worry about it. It's kind of an alternate universe. What we need to talk about, I think, is as a leader, unless you're at the top of the house, and even then the technology, this may be dictated by the CEO, your location strategy is pretty much, there's very few people that actually get to decide the location strategy. If you make the assumption that that's just going to be given to you, here's the rules of the road, and then you have to sort of fit within it and make it as effective as possible. And when we make that assumption, there is that hybrid, like let's talk through what are the things that you can do to make the whole team as successful as possible without feeling like you're leaving people behind, and also not feeling like you're creating a burden. Like, oh, this person's 2 hours behind us. We can't schedule, and it just makes scheduling hard because we have to accommodate this one person, or any of those types of things. Those are very real human things. Like, how do you wrestle with that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to your question there. And what I've seen is typically the outliers are the ones who cater towards. You have daily stand-up would have been at 9 o'clock in the morning, but you've got somebody in the West Coast and now we have to do it at 12. Or ask them to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and get right on a stand-up. But that's not good for anyone there because they don't want to get up that early. But also having your stand-up at noon, well, you've already lost 3 hours, so why are we giving an update of what I'm going to work on today? I've already been working on it for potentially 4 hours. So that's a big gap.
Should that necessitate a change in the way you think about meetings? We hear a lot of that talk, whether it's the guys from Basecamp or some of the other people that talk about remote first being kind of like an anti-meeting culture. Do you think that's a necessity or a precondition to being successful in those types of environments?
No, I think that it depends on the team, right? And it also depends on the individuals because, some people who I've hired on the West Coast just love getting up that early and they love working East Coast hours. So for them, it's nothing. They love to get done early. But in the situation that I was in, it definitely pushed towards a no meeting type approach. But that comes with its own pitfalls because there are just times when you just need to have a conversation with somebody. You need to talk it through. You need to just rubber duck it, as a developer might say. But if that person is 3 hours behind you, you don't know if they're up or not yet. And so you've got to schedule something and be more intentional instead of more in the moment. And there's times when you just need to hash it through or else you're going to waste 2 hours of productivity loss. And it's important that you're able to have those ad hoc conversations without having to really push on the boundaries that person might have of their working hours. So it's very situational on those individuals, but I can say that having it more distributed was a very big barrier to this particular team being more successful.
You're making a great point, right? Like part of working in a team is being able to lean on each other in various ways. Async is good, right? Like there's benefits to working in async fashion, leveraging Slack, whatever your instant messaging platform is, leveraging your tracking tools and things like that, where you can do the work, doesn't require everybody being in a meeting. There's a lot of efficiency there. I think you can go too far, right? Because or else it's like, hey, why do we have a team? Why don't we just hire a bunch of contractors or agents that are just off doing their little bits of work, and then one person stitches it together and off you go, right? Like now, obviously that's an extreme. Very few people achieve that level of, extreme behavior, but that is out there. Like I've known engineers like this that just, they only want to do everything async. And it's like, honestly, when they're that aggressive about it, it does make me question if they have other jobs. There's a lot of very legitimate reasons as well. Not to say that because somebody like async work, they have 3 jobs or more, but if people are pretty aggressive about it. But also people like people. They want to work together. They don't want to just interface with,
Well, I'm gonna change that a little bit. People need people. And whether you're aware of it or not, people need somebody around them. Shut me in a room, turn the lights off, let me just crush this through for a couple days. There's a time and a place for that when you just need that much focus. But if somebody is like that all the time, they're building up a lot of tribal knowledge in their own head. They're building an app to their liking, to their spec. And it's very isolating on the rest of the team. And so you're almost catering around decisions that they're making in isolation, but it's a team, it's a unit. You need to work together to make sure that you're working efficiently versus I'm just working around what Joe did because he doesn't join stand up. He doesn't join the meetings. We just kind of follow his suit and figure things out. But you need that camaraderie. You need to be able to say, hey, what's the best architecture approach for this? Hey, I'm struggling with this algorithm. I'm struggling with this database design. Is this too much? Is it too little? What am I missing here? And that's so powerful to keeping the progress going. Now, with the advent of the chatbots, that's helping a little bit, but it's helping answer some questions. But you're not getting that human interaction, that human contact that people need to be successful.
Yeah, totally. Like, I mean, that is, for all just a bunch of freelancers and agent runners and things like that, that's not a high performing team. You could do that. You could run that way, but that's not high performing. If you want a high performing culture, people have to have a shared mind space. They have to care about each other. They have to care about the work in a shared way. Like, you have a culture about what is good. What does that mean? That's important. It's a real challenge. In our circumstance, I mean, obviously we've worked for or with huge companies. We also run a small company ourselves. We do the same thing. We interrupt each other all the time. Hey, can I get 10 minutes? I just need to talk to you because you're the only person that has the context that I need. And that's why you have a good team. That's what you need from a team member, right? It's like, I need someone that knows at least as much about this as I do, that can challenge my thinking and that can help me work through a problem. Maybe it's product positioning, maybe it's financial model, maybe it's a technical design thing. We do that back and forth, and we do it at all kinds of hours. I mean, you mentioned the thing about boundaries. One of the interesting things is, like, you do have to get better at boundaries when you're remote and in async culture. You have to be more flexible, but then know where your boundaries are, I think is how I would describe it. And the thing I always tell people is, like, hey, you want to message me whenever you want. Like, we got people all over the world that we'll work with, time zones they're always worried about. I was like, send me a note whenever you want. If I look at it, that's on me. Like, that's my responsibility to set my notifications schedule, to set when I'm going to get a ding. That's on me. I don't like people trying to worry about that. Now, I do it. I'm slightly more conscious of it because people that work for me, there's a little bit different when you're giving somebody that reports to you and you give them a note. Like, it's a lot harder to ignore. That requires them spending energy to ignore it.
And you can even tell them, ignore this, but they'll still look at it and they'll still answer.
It's still in their head. That's why I really love the scheduling features, for whether it's for email or for Slack now, where I will, people will know. It's like, oh, okay, cool. It's 5 a.m.
Right at 9 in the morning.
Here's a list of stuff that Captain, because we both, really good friend of mine, we both used to work with. I mean, I've known the guy for over a decade, and he would send emails like, I'm like, bro, what are you doing at 2 a.m? Oh, I couldn't sleep. And so he gets through all his annoying admin emails at 2 a.m. It was just like, it was hilarious. But it's like, nobody ever needed a scheduling bot better. I think that's a big part of it, right? Like, you got to get your communication patterns down. If you want a healthy environment, you need to say, okay, this is the expectation. I personally think it's really good to go on video. If you're not going to be in person, the times that you are on a call, as long as you're in an environment where that's safe, like if you're on a car, you're driving or something like that, obviously don't do that. Go on video if you can. It just helps a lot with kind of the humanizing of each other, that relationship part. Like, it's not the same as being across the table, but it does do something. And by default, I think that's a really good thing to do.
Funny story about that is, when COVID was ending and people were starting to go back to the office, I had worked on this team for a while, and nobody went on video, nobody ever. And so we had a lot of meetings weekly. And so we all knew each other pretty well by our voice only, because there was never any video, no pictures on Zoom, nothing. And so I get into the building, 2 other people in the elevator car with me, and I'm just sitting there for a minute. And then all of a sudden she starts speaking, and my ears perk up. I look over and I say her name, and like, yeah, like, oh my gosh, I've been here this entire time. I didn't even know it was you because I didn't see your face. But I could have been working with my teammate and just completely ignored her because I had never seen her face, because it was always on no video Zooms. That was a shock to me in the time, because it was how we've been trained to just hear people instead of seeing them. Humans are visual. And so we need to see the expressions on faces. We need to see how people are reacting to it. Even when we're on video, I can see your reactions to things. If I'm saying something like, and I can pause, just, you haven't said a single word, but I can see that maybe I said something that needed some more context to help you understand it more. Being in a video, it's hard to break that habit of keeping off, because I want my privacy. I don't want people to see in my messy office.
I remember kind of like that cultural swing where it's like, okay, everybody's in COVID, they're working in their pajamas. And then it was like, okay, we're going to start to be alive again and all those different things. There was a lot of resistance, I remember. And it took a lot of pressure at the company we were at, from the senior leadership, to be like, turn your video on. I remember the guy would just sit and hold the meeting until Jason turned his camera on. And I mean, it just made it to the point where I just by default started turning it on. And it's like, I didn't want to deal with it, right? He gets a lot of credit for that because that was a really important thing to your point. And it's cheap now, right? Like it's not like it was 10 years ago where like WebEx or GoToMeeting or something like that was like all you had and they were very expensive. I mean, you can use Google Meet for free, basically, right? Like these things are very, very cheap. Use the video. Don't take this as a 100% truth, but like 95% of the time, just go on video. And as you go across international borders and the languages change and cultural norms change, video helps a lot, right? To your point, because there's nuances there. Nonverbals are not subject to those same things. Nonverbals are very elemental and very kind of low level lizard brain level stuff. And so we all have that. We all understand that regardless of what language we grew up, speaking. And so it helps a lot to have those things. So that's a big thing. I would say lean in a video, be clear about your communication patterns, work towards async. The tools are great. Like you can use these little stand-up bots, no matter whatever you're using for SDLC, whether it's Jira or Linear or Monday.com or GitHub issues or GitLab or whatever it is, Azure DevOps. Leverage that stuff, talk in those things and put details in there, tag each other and have the conversations. Like that stuff all works great, but you do need to connect with each other too, right? And those things are important. And like you mentioned, depending on the topic, we will only do it on video, right? Like,
we're a startup. We have to get into the weeds with certain things that are better when you see the person. You have to.
Yeah, like if we were talking about like financial planning and prioritization and hiring or like performance stuff, you need that additional context. It's not just words. There's all this other stuff that comes into it. That type of stuff is a big thing. We use Slack. There are other options. Teams is the default because everybody's got Microsoft. Microsoft gives it away for free. It's slow and clunky, but it does have a lot of these same features if you can get your security guys to let you use it with the apps and stuff like that. And there's a lot of opportunity there. But we talked about the team charter stuff before. This is more about norms. And I know you guys have done some good work around that. Can you talk about like some of the norms that you guys set previously?
Yeah, so we set some working hours, and I stole a bit of yours when you had created one, or it had evolved over the years, and somebody stole yours and evolved it, and I stole theirs and evolved it. What worked best for us is setting some core hours of, hey, look, we get it that you're distributed. That's okay. But our core hours are 10 to 4 Eastern, for example. Now, we had to be very clear that this is not your working day, but you have to be online and available, green dot, during these core hours. Whether you work 8 to 4, 9 to 6, 10 to 7, 10 to whatever. I had a guy who was working, just get up, split the day a little bit, but he was still there at the core hours, work in the morning and take off, work the core hours and work a little bit at night. It doesn't matter. If I Slack you during this time, barring any focus time that you have set up, hopefully you will get an answer within 15 or 20 minutes to make sure that the team can keep working effectively. We set some norms on communication. Hey, look, you're expected to be online, but if you're in focus time, set your status message of focus time. I'm not going to answer for a little while because I need that deep focus.
Yeah. But that's a really good point, though. There's a respect to your team to put that in there, right? Like if your primary communication medium is Slack and you're going to ignore someone because you're focused, just take the 3 seconds it takes to type it in there. It's a very, very, very small gesture that maybe no one will see. But also, your teammate that wants to get in touch with you may realize it. And instead of being annoyed with you, they'll be like, oh, yeah, Jason's heads down. I don't want to bother him with this. I'll check back in later. Or
they'll ask somebody else. Or to put it in a team channel or find another way to solve their problem. And then by that time, they might not even need you anymore.
Yeah, it's about being intentional, right? Like, and that was just the point. Like, it's a lot of small things. I mean, we keep saying that in cultural dynamics, but like when you're remote, it's being intentional about being proactive in communication. The thing is, you can be lazy with communication in person. If you have a bullpen where everybody in your team sits in that bullpen and you guys just have to turn around and look at each other and there's a shared whiteboard and you don't have to be very intentional about a lot of things. It will happen very organically. Like I remember one time, I think it was Ethan at Passport, like I had my headphones on, I was doing something. I saw out of the corner of my eye that he was coming towards me and then he like stopped and then like kind of diverted. It was just enough attention that it caught my attention. I was like, hey, what's up? He's like, no. I can tell you got your headphones on, you're doing something. I'll come back. You'd only have that if he had been around me for many, many hours a day, every day, and known that was when I was actually getting some work done. Leave him alone for a second. If he's just slacking, he would have no context. So you got to have to provide that context to your teammates. If you want them to respect you, you want them to respect your bubble and your boundaries the way you want. So It was really good. I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, and so to that point, taking a little bit further, is that spelling out all those intentional moments when you submit a request for help. That's fine, but what's the expectation from the team on the inverse of that? If somebody does need help and they post for something, somebody should at least reach out within X amount of minutes. We're not trying to nitpick timing or things like that, but if you are available and you're not doing some deep focus work, which, let's be real, no, not everybody's doing that at the same time. There's typically something you're waiting for a pipeline to build, whatever. Just to go help it and just look to see, does anybody need some help? Because somebody on my team could be floundering, and that if I take that 30 seconds, they could help. So just bringing people's awareness to those little nuances to the remote world and the remote work is that a lot of parts that you take for granted before. You would see somebody walking by and they were just like, hey, you got a second? I'm working on something that I need some help with. And you could answer right away.
Yeah, they're wandering around already. So they're free, right? Like until you get all that by default. Yeah, exactly.
Right. But then if you put a message in Slack, you could be sitting there. I would see messages go by for days. It's like, hey, did you see that? Did somebody see this? Like, yeah, but I thought so-and-so would get it. Yeah, but I thought so-and-so would get it. And so that's something driving that if you see it, acknowledge it, say, hey, even if you just don't know, answer, I don't know. But at least gives that person that, okay, somebody saw this. I'm not getting ignored. This is a really hard problem, but we can't solve it. But it's
yeah,
the
if I think
typical
Jason's
things that
gonna
you'd
pick
see.
it up, I'm be like, hey, I looked at this. I don't know. You're going to need Jason's help, right? Like,
yeah,
I might be kind of dumping the turd on your lap, but at least it's not just sitting out there in the open as an unanswered request.
Exactly.
I mean, the thing is, it's funny. You're an engineering leader. Like you've got this concept of all these operational principles. It's really not that different. What we're just talking about is kind of like setting SLAs, right? Like what does it look like inside the team? And again, you don't have to, we're not necessarily measuring these, although some people do. There's some interesting stuff around that. But what are your norms? How quickly are you expected to get a code review done? If I put a code review out there, what's the expectation and then what's the requirement? Those are two different things. Hey, the expectation is somebody will look at it within an hour. The requirement is it should never sit for more than 24 hours or whatever. I'm just making that up.
Right.
But that type of a thing. And then I think that's really useful to say. It's like, okay, what are the things that, here's an informal level and here's the formal level. And then it just kind of naturally evolves that way. And there can kind of come from that. Any other norms you think are kind of really important?
Every team's so different. It's just typically it's going to be the request for help. What's the response format? Pull requests, meeting cadences, and not trying to have meetings every day. Respect some of the people who might be in different time zones. And hey, if you're not going to be at a meeting for reasons, is that just let everybody know. It's fine if you don't need to be there, but just define what those categories are for you and what you might overlook if you're not in person all the time, because it's just a lot of that's taken for granted, and start to challenge those assumptions and see what are we doing that I'm missing with these remote individuals. But you mentioned something earlier I want to touch back on. It's the proximity bias. It's those people who are in person more often. We're talking about hybrid, and some people are remote, some people are in office, hybrid or full-time. But those who are remote, how do you keep them from being more the second-class citizens, not on the day-to-day, but on the macro of this person who's remote? Well, we don't see them, so they don't get promoted.
So I think there's two big subparts of that, right? Like there's the, how are you developing these people and mentoring them and all those different types of stuff? That's a topic we can pick up. I think what you're asking more is like performance management aspects of it, right?
Yeah, we don't see this person, we don't see their, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It just is. If you have a hub or a headquarters where, say, 60, 70, even 50%, the higher, the harder, right? Where everybody's there, and then you've got somebody who's just a kind of an individual contributor doing good work, the way decisions get made in the enterprises, it's going to be tough. They're not going to have the same exposure to the decision makers and the opinion makers, because that's the other thing that happens in these environments is they silo even more, right? And that's another big thing to fight against is, okay, I've got my little team and we work the way that we work. And then there's no shared cafeteria. There's no shared bathroom. There's no shared conference room. There's no, everything is decentralized to the point where you could take that whole team and plug them into 30 different companies and it really wouldn't change that much. Like that's an issue. And if you want to get promoted, I mean, maybe lower levels, it doesn't really matter. But if you want to get into like the more senior levels of individual contributing or into anything in management or senior management, your boss matters, but your boss only matters like half of it, or maybe even not quite half, right? It's their boss, their boss's boss, And it's all of the peers, because all of those peers are the ones that set the opinion of the people that make that decision. If you wanted to get somebody promoted, like your boss and boss's peers all need to agree. I mean, depends on the level and all those things. But like, I've blocked promotions for people that didn't, I say block, I didn't directly have a say. I indirectly prevented that from happening. And I've also helped people get it because I looked at it and said, no, either one, I have no idea who this person is, or I know who they are, I have an opinion, and here's my opinion, and it's not great. I'm not endorsing this. And vice versa. I've had people get interfered with, and I've also had things get helped. That's a big part of it. And there's really no fixing that. You can be super intentional about giving people face time. We're going to present this thing. Stevie's going to talk about it. Hey, big boss. Stevie, remember Stevie? He's on the camera. Wave Stevie. He's going to talk about such and such and how all the good work he did and all that type of stuff. And then you're going to kind of co-narrate it because you're in person. You have all the credibility. Share some of that with Stevie. That can help, but it's not the same as being in the room. And it's not the same as the boss walking by and seeing you do work and picking up a conversation, and you get into some side conversation and now they have a personal connection to you and now you're more humanized. You're not a name on a spreadsheet. People can try to do intentional things to not have that be the case. The brutal reality of it is it's just harder. And that's one of the trade-offs. Like if you want to work remote, you want to live in the mountains, use Starlink to remote into a Fortune 500 company and have that lifestyle. That's awesome. Good for you. There's trade-offs. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. And the one of them is it's going to be harder for you to be in a leadership position. Not impossible. It can happen. Depends on the company, but it's going to be harder.
And where do you think metrics come in on this? Because, you can measure output, you can measure what people's contributions are. You've got two engineers, one's remote, one's in person. Where do metrics come in to say, hey, look, these two developers are both crushing it. They both deserve promotions, but you've got one to give, or your boss has one to give. How can you put a layer of metrics in there to say, hey, look, you know what? The remote person actually does deserve this because their contributions outweigh others. So, we're working on developer metrics. We're working on things like that. How do you bring that to the table to make sure that the right people see the output of those individuals you're fighting for?
It's a great call out, right? I mean, I think my take is that works a lot better at the lower levels, right?
Mm-hmm.
Senior engineer, super senior, principal, et cetera. Like those types of levels work a lot easier. Once you get into management, the metrics change. It becomes more outcome oriented. Like for us, we use like maturity journeys, right? Like we score, we help companies build these really robust, complicated scoring methodologies that then say how you're doing and according to, potentially infinite dimensions.
Yeah, like how long how's you're closing out your vulnerabilities, you're closing out your end of life, you're closing out the things that can be measured. And, that's part of the factor, but that's not the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Right. I mean, I think that stuff matters. Again, I think it depends on the overall organizational culture. If the leadership and of the business, whether it's the C-suite, whatever, the more they are concentrated in one place, the harder it's going to be to move up the chain while not there. That pre-exists, remote. That would just be if you're in a satellite office. People would move to headquarters. I'm going to move to New York. I'm going to move to LA. I'm going to move to wherever because I got to be near the CEO because the CEO is going to make me the VP. But nobody else is going to. And if the CEO doesn't know that I'm, the best, then it's not going to matter. And just the numbers on the spreadsheet aren't going to be enough. They've got to trust me personally. Right. So like that's existed, since the beginning of commerce, basically. That's not going away. I think, like I said, metrics have a place. It's hard. Like we talked about it before with engineering, trying to make engineering more measurable, trying to make it more outcome oriented. But it comes down to a lot of human factors. Like, do I trust this person? Do they drive the right outcomes? And unfortunately, those types of things are, I mean, the outcomes obviously don't have anything to do with it, but also if your team is there, right? Like, so let's say you're an app manager and you've got 20 people that work for you and they're all on site and your boss is getting to know them, but you're 3 hours away. He's like, well, I'm already managing your people. I'm already getting to know why am I promoting you if I'm doing your job? Like, I mean, that's maybe a silly way to look at it, but it's just hard. It's just not the way that people think about these things. It can just be a struggle. If you're the leader who's trying to get the remote person, advancement, I mean, one, make sure they have it, make sure they want it. Again, if they're living in the mountains, they're prioritizing other things. Maybe they don't want more responsibility. So making sure that's key. And then, yeah, give them FaceTime, but it's an uphill battle. That's all. You're at a disadvantage. Doesn't mean you can't get there. like you said, metrics can be helpful. Be like, hey, I can objectively show you that Jane runs a great shop. We should give Jane more responsibility. We should do all those things. And that's the other thing I would say is talent planning, talent management, end of year stuff, ratings, all that type of stuff. That's not as binary. I don't know if we've ever talked about this before, but like in the rooms where those decisions are actually made, it's not as binary as it may seem. It's a continuum, it's a spectrum, and it's an ongoing conversation over months and years.
And you're piecing together conversations from multiple leaders of their interactions with that person that metrics can't support alone. It's like, oh yeah, I talked to Jane and she was on a triage with me. She just stumbled onto it and solved it within a few minutes. Like she's got my vote. And
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's all those, the summation of all those helps to paint that picture, not just what you can measure, but the impact to those around as well.
Yeah, and again, if you're trying to like, if you're like, let's say you're the guy who's in the room where those decisions are getting made, and you're trying to promote, someone, you have to bring that to people in advance, right? You have to start making a case. I mean, I've been in 3 or 4 big companies now, and they all kind of do it the same, where it's like you have the decision maker and then there's the panelists, and then everybody goes through their teams. You talk about the people at the top of the list and the bottom of the list, generally speaking, because you don't have time to go through everybody. So you make sure you hit the more senior folks, and you hit the people that you're pushing for things and the people that are problems. And then there's the normal distribution of everybody who's doing fine. There's really no reason to talk about it unless someone else wants to bring somebody up and say they should be one way or the other. Doesn't happen a ton, but it does happen. And so that's it. And so what you want to do is you say, okay, hey, I've got Stevie or whatever, great engineer, passionate. We want to give him more scope. And you just bring it up and you say, here's the deal. Stevie's lives in the mountains, but he's on top of stuff. He cares. He's great. What do we think? What do we think we can give him? How can we advance him? And you bring it up to the room and you let them talk about it. And they say, oh, well, it's very hard when they're not here. And like all that stuff happens. You're like, great. But then you anchor in everyone's mind. And then you can continue they'll try to have that conversation, right? The one you mentioned with the fictional Jane character, right? Like they'll say, oh, interesting. This is somebody that Duncan says is a star. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention now. Advocate for your people. Be very active. It's a long game. It's not something where you just show up with here's my case for why Jason should be promoted. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. It has to be a continuum. It's like, you might not get it the first go. That's fine. You try again and you say, okay, well, what was missing? What does he need to do, or he or she need to do to get to that next level? And it could just be time and seat. Again, if it's a fast mover, it could be a time and seat thing. It could be they don't have the relationships. Nobody knows who they are. Okay, great. You know what to do. It's through those conversations. And it could be just, hey, they hit their ceiling and it just is what it is. But I think there's a lot you can do.
Yeah, what I did that worked pretty well is I just level set with them when we're starting to have these performance conversations, or like a kickoff when they were started, or a quarterly thing. And I'd have them build their own files for themselves of things that they would have either joined ad hoc or things that I might not be aware of. I would keep a file, they'd keep a file, and they would either send it to me or put it in their end of the year evaluation. So now I've got this huge list of things that they had done or been a part of that maybe I knew about them already, but I'd have names that they talked to. I'd have times. I'd have all this information to say, hey, look, no, here's the things that they did. Here's the impact, that the non-tangible impacts that were had. And so you have this list. You should do that regardless, right? Anybody who's taking ownership of their career should have a file of the things that they had done and the impact that they've made. But it's even more important for those who are remote to build their case for them, because it's going to be an uphill battle. And I was just quite frank with them about that. I said, hey, look, you're not here. You need to build this file so that we know what you've done outside of our one-on-one interactions, or where I'm in the room or somebody else is in the room. Build the case for yourself so that I have that to work on your behalf, so that I can make sure that we have all the information that you see, so that there's not a gap. Somebody who doesn't remember it just in that meeting, but if you got that little teaser, like, oh yeah, I completely forgot all about that. And so that's important.
Yeah, it's such a good idea. It's one of those things that almost people are going to listen to this and say, "Oh, it's a really good idea," and almost no one's going to do it. And
nobody's going to do it,
right? Because and I'll be the first to admit I've never done anything like that. I'm terrible at selling myself and what I've done, because I forget. I move on, and it's like, oh, somebody else would be like, "No, you did these 30 things." I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right, I did."
I would have
Cool.
I would have files on my email of either somebody was copied on as a thank you. I'd have every person had a file on my email, and I never deleted emails, just a thank you. And I'd go back through at review time and look at that person. Okay, oh yeah, I remember that. and I have all that for the year-end
Yeah.
evaluations.
One thing I'd say about your evaluations, especially in a remote context, right? If you think about this way, and I'll just be super honest, and people will judge me in such as life, but like I used to very much mail in year-end valuations in terms of what went into the tool, because the conversations I would be having with people that work for me, my subordinates or direct reports. Sorry, I don't like the word subordinate. Like it's an ongoing performance conversation. We're talking about it at least once a month, if not more often. Like where do they want to go? Like we're very in sync on those things. So to kind of taking the formality and writing it all up, for a long time I was this is a waste of time, whatever. My mind changed on that as I was doing it more, because it's more about the documentation, right? Because people are going to move around. You might leave the company, you might get a different job, and all that context that you have in the relationship is gone. The performance review says nothing. Jason's great. Okay. Now there's a new boss, and the new boss is starting from scratch. Maybe they don't jive with you, and now there's no documentation to protect Jason in this context for the boss. So I would say, even if you're someone who is doing a more active kind of, call it rolling performance review, taking the time to really document those things can be very, very useful in the long run as you get into all kinds of stuff. Who knows what's going to happen? You could win the lottery, you could get acquired, you could move somewhere else. Like there's all kinds of things, and you want, especially in a remote context, because as their boss, you're even more important because you're their connection to the rest of the company. They don't have their own relationships. I mean, they might. I don't want to overstate it, but it's not going to be as natural for them to have their own relationships with the rest of the company the same way. And so you have to really work on documenting it. I mean, it's a really good call out that I've never done as well as I should have.
It takes a few minutes. It's just an archive to a folder, or they would have their own archives, things like that. But then I could, at the transition period, if that person had a long history, take all those emails, zip them up, and send to the new manager. And here's all that context that you might be missing.
Yeah.
Man, I would love to put an LLM on that email inbox, and just to see over those years how much was in there.
Some of this is going to get easier. Like, I mean, we already do all kinds of automation with our tools. I mean, we're a Google Workspace and Slack shop, right? So our communication's largely in those tools and GitHub. There's a lot we already do and can do more. Theoretically, Copilot's got some of the same stuff. I think that'll probably get better over time. I think you can do a lot more of this type of stuff. So I would lean into that as well. Again, the more it's automated, maybe the less valuable it is. I don't know, because if everybody does it, then it's not as cool. But it's
so
not
you get the nuggets out of there, the things that you've forgotten about. I could see that. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Or building a timeline, and then you can mentally fill in the gaps, and just to be an augment or brain 2 versus your brain 1.
Yeah, 100%. So the last pit before we wrap, I do want to talk about our situation is slightly unique, right? We are almost entirely in Charlotte, but we're remote, right? So everybody's in the same vicinity, but we don't have an office. We will occasionally, once or twice a month, have an in-person day. We'll just go book a WeWork or something like that, right? For all intents and purposes, a fully remote company. And we've got very young people coming straight out of college, first job. How do we help those folks develop? How do we help them develop the social skills in a corporate environment, in a business environment? Not that they don't have social skills. Don't mean to say that. Sorry, Kensho. But like, it's a different thing, right? Like, talking in a professional environment and communication skills in a professional environment is different. How do they get the business context? All those different things when they're just behind a screen. Like, what are some of the things that we're doing intentionally that you think we should be doing to help mentor and grow those folks?
Yeah, it's all about intentionality and time. Somebody who's earlier on in the career would ask me a question, but you're asking a very specific question, and there's so much more that I know that they don't have context of yet. So, nope, this is a meeting. This is something that we need some, maybe not video time, but at least this is not something I'm going to type up, because if I give you that one slice of an answer, there's so much more that I would be doing you a disservice of just answering the question directly. So flip to a meeting, have the conversation, ask how much of this are you familiar with? How much are you not? I don't want to go off on a tangent if you're already familiar with it, but just getting that connection in the understanding of where they are on their understanding of the process, the flow, the code, whatever it is. And so once you're in sync with that, it's okay, cool. We're starting from a blank slate. I didn't want to assume that we were, but that was pretty much what I expected. And so then building up that context of, okay, well, if you're asked this question, but you should probably be asking this question. Or if you go with what you just asked, this is where you'd look. But if you were asking the right question, you'd look over here and start to say, hey, here's what you're really asking. Here's why this matters. And here's how this all fits into the whole hierarchy of the whole thing. And I felt I kind of go onto a tangent sometimes, but giving just a slice of an answer, you would actually probably be giving a wrong answer, because it's, what are you asking, but what are you trying to ask? What is the goal that you are looking for here? And that's the question that you want to answer, but you also don't want to assume. I think that's for me, is that I never want to assume that somebody doesn't know something, because that's just rude.
It's so funny, man. Like, can you imagine how exhausted our wives and daughters are with us?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's all I can think of right now. It's like, oh God, I do this to my kids. They'll ask like,
my eldest is doing this too. She's like, I find my eldest doing this. Well, do you mean this? Like,
yeah,
yes, I do, but no.
And I'm just like, well, let me give you the full dissertation of why that matters. Right? And it's just brutal. Yeah, you could see him just get the look like, no. I just want the answer to this question. It's like, yes, but if you don't know these 300 other things,
yes,
that's
just
real.
Give me the answer, but I need to give you more.
You must have the secret knowledge, not just the answer. No, it's hilarious, but that is what it takes, right? Like, it is that, okay, I can give you the answer. That's fine. ChatGPT could give you the answer. That's not the point. The point is, again, I think we've said it before, a good boss teaches you how to think about problems properly. And that's true whether it's cultural issues, financial issues, strategy issues, technical issues, communication issues, all those different things. It's teaching them that. It's like, okay, I'm asking this question about this particular feature. I'm asking a question about a thing I'm trying to do that's right in front of me. But what I'm hearing you say is really that's a learning opportunity. You're like, oh, great. He's really asked about this bigger, broader, how to think about X. He just doesn't know that. He doesn't know enough to ask that question. So it's like, okay, cool. So let's peanut butter in a bunch of context and knowledge, so that the next time he's encountering something in this, like, he's going to have better context and he can think through it better. I mean, that's a really good thing. So, like, let me ask you that, is like, do you schedule time for that? Do you just understand, hey, I've got people on my team that are really junior, I'm going to look for opportunities to sort of jump in and sort of dad story them? Or like, how do you practically tackle that?
You could cherry pick it, right? That's one approach. And you see something and you dive in there in the moment and you hit them one, right? You just, I see somebody's asking this question, so I'm going to answer it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the teaching moment. That doesn't scale for anything unless you want your whole job to be about correcting people, which it could be in that interpreted that way of, but if you have a manager who's supposed to be answering that question, you're answering that question, you're giving the hint of, I don't trust my manager to teach their team. I'm going to do it for them, but I'm going to skip them and answer directly. And that sends a message. Whether you think it does or not, it sends a message that I don't trust you to lead your team effectively. And so now if you are that manager, then by all means, just go for it, like one-on-one. But if you're up a couple levels from that, or you're, even a skip level to that individual, you've got to take that as a, where's the wind blowing and where's my team at holistically? If I see one person answering it, did they get the answer from the manager? This is very specific to chat conversations that you're not going to be a part of. But if you don't have that visibility, well, that's probably something that you need. Be in those Slack conversations, be in the channels with those, be there so you can have that bird's eye view of what's happening. You don't always have to answer. I was in a bunch of chat groups I would never answer in, but having that visibility of where the conversation flowed to, or what was answered or what was asked, was super helpful. And then they wanted me there so I could kind of be that overview and arbiter if there's a disagreement, or like, hey, Jason, you remember when we had this conversation? Yeah, I was there. I remember that. And so they would keep pulling me into these channels. But then if you are that skip level manager or whatever that might be to your level, is you need to look at that in aggregate to see, where's my team? What does my team need? What does my manager need if those individuals aren't getting answers? Or if those people are 6, 9, 12 months into their role and they're still asking questions that their manager should have answered already. There's a lot of context there, a lot of nuances that you have to have visibility to the questions that are being asked. Should this person still be asking this question if they're this far into their career with your team? What are their skills at? But not just team 1, 2, 3. You got to look at it as a whole and say, okay, well, I see a lot of questions about event-driven architecture. Maybe we need to look at a lunch and learn on that. Or I'm getting a lot of questions on API contracts, or just being silly examples here, but you have to look at where your team is, how you then can step into, all right, well, clearly we need some training on specs because I see all the time of people complaining that my team is not giving good contracts out. Okay, well, I can solve that, but I'm going to solve that for my group, not just this one person, because that's not a good use of your time either. I mean, it is, to be fair. It's a good use of time, but your time is better spent solving the big problem, not the one problem.
Yep. Okay, cool. No, I agree with that. I mean, I think what you're saying is you have to still do this within the context of your role. You have to look for opportunities for leverage. If you're the frontline manager, you're going to treat somebody like that differently than if you're the app manager or the VP or the director or something like that. So
exactly.
So I think that totally makes sense. So, all right, cool. Anything else about remote work we wanted to hit before we're done, you think?
I don't know. We kind of went through a lot. I'm sure there's some things that we're missing, but I mean, this is not a 3 or 6 hour podcast. We try to keep them to an hour. So also people get tired of hearing us drone on.
Yeah. The one thing we didn't hit, I totally agree. We do get exhausting, I'm sure. The one thing we didn't hit was, I did mention real briefly that we try to get in person is, and this is all, again, corporate, depends on how spread out you are. If you can bring people in at least once a year at a minimum, I think that's good. The people that get to finally get in person, it's very gratifying for them. It's very positive. So that's a really good investment.
That's money well spent for sure.
If you have it. I mean, not everybody has it, especially if they're very distributed. They don't want to spend the money on it. Fair enough. But if you can get it, it's definitely worth it. So, all right, cool. Yeah. I mean, like I said, if you could be all in person or all remote, that's better. It's not usually the world we live in. And hopefully this was helpful, helps you guys navigate that. There's some good nuggets. If you disagree, if you have anything you think that we missed or that we got wrong, please let us know. We'd love to hear about it.
Yeah. Send us a message. We'll have those conversations. We'll exhaust you in person or one-on-one.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. All right. Well, thanks, Jay. Talk to you guys soon.
Yep.
Cheers.
See ya.